In 1658, after a bloody civil war with his own brothers, Aurangzeb ascended the Mughal throne. He imprisoned his father, Shah Jahan, the emperor of art and white domes, killed his eldest brother, and eliminated any rivals to his claim. Unlike his predecessors, Aurangzeb was a fierce warrior and a devout Muslim. His ambition wasn't just to protect what he had inherited, but to bring the entire Indian subcontinent under Mughal domination. Under his rule, the empire swelled to its greatest territorial extent, stretching from Kabul to Bengal, from Kashmir to the southern Deccan. In 1686, he declared war on the kingdom of Bijapur, a powerful Muslim state in the south. After a grueling year-long siege, Bijapur fell. Shortly after, in 1687, the diamond-rich kingdom of Golconda also submitted to Mughal might after an 8-month campaign. The last independent kingdoms of the south were conquered, but this glory was a facade. The constant warfare was bleeding the treasury dry. The army was exhausted, and the government was losing touch with the people it ruled. More importantly, Aurangzeb's harsh religious policies were creating deep resentment. He imposed the jizya tax on non-Muslims and destroyed temples, tightening Islamic orthodoxy across the land. It was in this environment, in the rugged southwestern region, that a new resistance began to smolder: the Marathas. While Aurangzeb was consolidating his power in Delhi, a young man from the Bhonsle clan was quietly building his own empire. His name was Shivaji. He had no grand court, no war elephants, and no massive army. He started with just a few hundred loyal men, local peasants and soldiers who knew every hill and valley of their homeland. But he possessed something the Mughals lacked: a clear vision for indigenous autonomy, a brilliant strategy, and the unshakable belief that this land did not belong to invaders from the north. As early as 1645, at the tender age of 15, Shivaji had begun secretly recruiting troops and fortifying old strongholds like Torna and Sinhagad. By the early 1650s, he controlled a significant area along the western slopes of the Deccan, including the vital valleys that connected the coast to the central plateau. Unlike traditional armies, Shivaji's forces were built on speed and flexibility. His light cavalry could move swiftly through the steep, unforgiving terrain. At its peak, his army consisted of about 25,000 to 30,000 cavalry, supported by fortress garrisons and local militias. The heart of the Maratha resistance was a network of mountain forts. These strongholds were connected by secret mountain paths and could signal each other with fire. If the Mughals managed to capture one fort, others would coordinate to strike their rear, cutting off their supply lines. Even when surrounded, the Marathas could resupply themselves through trails known only to locals or by sea, thanks to their small but effective naval fleet. In 1665, the Mughals launched a massive campaign to crush the Maratha rebellion. The operation was led by Mirza Raja Jai Singh, an experienced Rajput general known for both his military prowess and his diplomatic skill. The Mughal force, numbering around 40,000 men, included Rajput cavalry, Mughal infantry and heavy artillery, reinforced by Persian siege experts brought down from the north. Their target was Purandar Fort, one of the most strategic centers of Shivaji's defense system. After capturing a series of smaller forts, the Mughals laid siege to Purandar. The siege lasted for over 2 months during the monsoon season. Despite relentless cannon fire, the Maratha garrison of just 2,000 men, led by the courageous Murabaji Deshpande, fought back fiercely. They launched daring raids, inflicting significant losses on the besiegers. In one legendary battle, Murabaji led a suicide squad at night, breaking through the Mughal lines to destroy their artillery positions before he was tragically killed. His death was a devastating blow to Shivaji, but it was also a clear sign that continuing the fight would only lead to more needless sacrifice. Facing encirclement and dwindling supplies, Shivaji made a difficult choice. he decided to negotiate. In June 1665, the Treaty of Purandar was signed. Shivaji was forced to surrender 23 forts, nearly half of his territory. He also had to send his young son, Sambhaji, to the Mughal court in Delhi as a hostage, a pledge of his submission. But this was not a total defeat. It was a strategic retreat. Shivaji wisely kept 12 key forts hidden deep in the Western Ghats, including Raigad. These fortresses were almost impossible for the Mughals to reach, ensuring the Marathas had a base from which to rebuild and fight another day. A year later, Shivaji accepted Aurangzeb's invitation to the Mughal court in Agra, hoping to negotiate an official position within the empire. But instead of being honored, he was deliberately humiliated, placed in a rank far below his status. Soon, he was put under house arrest, confined to a palace in Agra under heavy guard. Escape seemed impossible. Yet Shivaji devised one of the most daring escape plans in history. He feigned illness and began sending out large baskets of fruit and sweets every day as offerings for the poor. The guards grew accustomed to the routine. Then, one day in August 1666, Shivaji and his son Sambhaji hid inside 2 of these baskets. They were carried right past the guards and out of the city. After disappearing for more than 10 days, Shivaji reappeared in the Deccan, having traveled hundreds of miles in disguise. This incredible escape not only humiliated Aurangzeb's court, but also cemented Shivaji's status as a legendary hero. With his freedom regained, Shivaji began reclaiming his lost territory. One of the most iconic battles of this period was the recapture of Sinhagad Fort in 1670. Tanaji Malusare, one of Shivaji's most trusted commanders, led a small force of 500 men on a daring night raid. They scaled a sheer cliff face using ropes and attacked the fort from its least defended side. The battle that followed was a chaotic, brutal hand-to-hand struggle in the dark. Tanaji fought his way to the Mughal commander Udaiban Rathod and engaged him in a fierce duel. Tragically, just as victory was within reach, Tanaji fell. But his sacrifice was not in vain. The fort was captured, a pivotal victory that signaled the resurgence of Maratha power. Shivaji's guerrilla tactics, his network of forts, and his unyielding spirit had proven that even the mighty Mughal Empire could be challenged. The stage was set for the rise of a new power in India, born from the mountains and forged in the fire of resistance. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories from history. We'll see you in the next video. But his spirit inspired the remaining soldiers. They fought like wounded tigers, storming every watchtower, every wall, until the entire fort was recaptured before dawn. When Shivaji heard that the fort had fallen to the Marathas, but Tanagi had been killed, he stood still for a long time, not saying a word. Then he sighed, looked towards the west, where the first light of day was just beginning to shine on the Siadri range, and uttered a sentence that has lived forever in the hearts of posterity. We have regained Sinhagad, but we have lost our lion. This sentence meant a fort can be recaptured, but a man like Tanagi cannot be found a second time. From here, the Maratha resistance was not just a local movement. It became a provisional state with an army, finances, and administration. Shivaji proclaimed himself king in 1674 and was crowned at Rayad, formally establishing Surajya, a monarchy based on morality, national sovereignty, and Hindu cultural identity. In his later years, Shivaji did not stop at holding on to the lands he controlled, but continued to expand his influence southward, conducting a series of campaigns against Karnataka, reaching as far as Mysore and the Malabar coast. In particular, he captured 2 important forts, Gingji and Vala, key positions in southern India. This victory not only shocked the entire Tamil Nadu region, but also broke the bond between the Mughals and the Muslim states, such as Bijapur and Golconda, which had long been allies of the northern court. Immediately after Shivaji, the central authority of the Maratha state initially fell into disarray, but was re-established under a new model, the Peshwa system. The head of the Peshwa, a title equivalent to a prime minister, did not wear a crown, but in fact had full military and administrative power. Peshwa Balaji Vishwanath was the first to lay the foundations for the Maratha Renaissance after Aurangzeb, and his son Baji I turned those seeds into arrows, piercing the heart of the Mughal Empire. Baji I assumed the Peshwa position in 1720 at the age of 20. Under his leadership, the Maratha army was completely reformed to adapt to the vast terrain and the need for high-speed movement. Baji eliminated most of his infantry and heavy war elephants, replacing them with mobile light cavalry, which could march over 100 kilometers a day, carrying provisions and moving without heavy supply wagons. The army no longer attacked cities, but attacked trade routes, logistics, and most importantly, directly attacked Mughal political prestige by attacking places the court considered impregnable. From their base in Pune, the Marathas began to expand in three directions: northwest through the Malwa region to link the Deen with Delhi, northeast through Bundelkhand to squeeze into the heartland of North India, and straight north toward Delhi, the heart of the Mughal Empire. Baji did not need to capture each province. He simply needed to show the world that the court in Delhi was no longer the one deciding the fate of the subcontinent. During 1728 to 1735, Baji Rao launched a series of campaigns against the Mughals' core allies. Notable among them was the Battle of Panipat in 1728, where he defeated Nismul-Mulk, who had been the viceroy of the Deen under the Mughals, with only a small cavalry force. In this battle, Baji used mobile siege tactics, constantly harassing, cutting off supplies, forcing the Nizam to retreat to the fortress of Aurangabad, then besieging from a distance until he asked for a truce. This was a victory that shook the whole of central India and was considered by many later military scholars, including British officers, as a model of Asian mobile warfare. In 1731, at the Battle of Devout, the Marathas defeated the combined forces of the cities of Janjira opponents with powerful sea fleets, thereby gaining control of the entire Konkan region and opening the way for a thrust into Gujarat. The 1737 campaign was the culmination of this strategy. In early spring, Baji set out from Satara with some 25,000 cavalry without heavy artillery or supply wagons. He did not attack forts or citadels. Instead, he followed the major trade routes, marching at lightning speed through Ujjain, Gwalior, and then approaching Delhi. In just 2 weeks, he had covered more than 1,000 kilometers and appeared on the outskirts of the capital without any Mughal army to stop him. The battle took place at Panipat, right next to the capital. The Maratha army crushed the Mughal defenders under Khan Dawaran, a veteran of the court. And the Emperor Muhammad Shah was so panicked that he sought help from the Nizam of Hyderabad. But before reinforcements could arrive, Baji withdrew to Malwa as planned, leaving behind a devastated and humiliated court. Soon after, the Mughal and Nizam armies converged on Powal to counterattack. But once again, Baji Rao proved himself a master strategist. The Marathas did not attack head-on, but instead tightly surrounded the Bhopal plains where the combined forces were concentrated. He cut off water supplies, destroyed logistics, and harassed the enemy constantly, causing morale to plummet. The Mughal and Nizam armies were trapped in the lands, starved of food, while the Marathas closed in from the hillsides, using small cavalry to attack quickly and decisively. After weeks of being unable to counterattack, the Nizam was forced to sign the Treaty of Bal in 1738, formally ceding the entire Malwa region to the Marathas and pledging not to intervene in the war in the north again. The Treaty of Bhopal was a fatal blow to the Mughal Empire. A strategic area linking the central region with the north was now in Maratha hands. From then on, the emperor's influence in Delhi became formal. The court was still ceremonial, the drums and gongs were still there. But real power had fallen into the hands of the knights from the Deen, who did not claim to be kings, but ran the empire in their own way. After the resounding victories of Baji, the Maratha Confederacy entered a period of great prosperity. For the first time since the time of ancient Ashoka, an indigenous force controlled practically the entire Indian subcontinent. Under the successor, Peshwa Baji Rao, son of Baji Rao, the Marathas not only maintained their father's dominance, but also continued to expand in all directions. The territory under Maratha influence now stretched from the Gujarat coast in the west to Orissa in the east. From the fertile valleys of Bundelkhand all the way to Punjab, the gateway to the northern frontier. The Mughal Emperor Shah Alam remained nominally on the throne in Delhi, but no edict could be issued without the approval of the Peshwa in Pune. To maintain power, the Maratha Confederacy reorganized its system of government on a federal model. Lands were granted to prominent families such as the Hulkars of Indore, the Scindias of Gwalior, the Gakwads of Boda. Although not allegiance to the Peshwa, these lords recognized Pune as the common center of power. Taxes were collected at a uniform rate and military campaigns were mobilized from several states simultaneously. They became a decentralized but highly mobile empire. However, this rapid expansion sowed the seeds of a strategic mistake: deep intervention in the Punjab region, which was still contested by Muslim, Sikh and foreign powers from Central Asia. When the Marathas advanced into the region in the 1750s, they not only encountered local armies, but also a power that had seemed to have receded from Indian history. Ahmad Shah Dani, the founder of the Dani Empire in Afghanistan, also known as Ahmad Shah Abdali. Between 1757 and 1760, Ahmad Shah made several incursions into northern India, frequently clashing with Maratha units controlling Delhi and Punjab. Notably, in the Battle of Delhi in 1757, after Ahmad Shah captured the capital, the Marathas were forced to temporarily withdraw from the region. However, just 2 years later in 1759, under Maratha Generals Raghunath Rao and Malhar Rao Holkar, they launched a major counteroffensive into the Doab and Rohilkhand regions, recapturing much of the lost territory and pushing the Dani army back to the western edge of Punjab. The fighting reached its climax in late 1760 when both sides concentrated their forces on the Panipat plain. The Marathas mobilized a huge force to meet the battle. Under the command of Sadashi Rao Bau, the Peshwa's cousin, the Maratha army consisted of about 75,000 regular soldiers, plus about 100,000 militiamen, merchants and their families, making it a large but cumbersome force. In theory, they had absolute superiority in numbers, but in practice, it was a burden. Sadashra adopted a slow march strategy, carrying provisions, wagon trains, war elephants, and even non-combatant retinues, which reduced the army's mobility to almost zero. Meanwhile, Ahmad Shah Durrani led a force of about 60,000 men with elite cavalry, mobile artillery, and Rohilla allies and the Nawab of Oudh. Notably, his army used small cannons mounted on camels, zambaraks, a highly mobile and effective weapon in open warfare, especially on the flat terrain of Panipat. For several tense weeks, the two sides fought on the Panipat plains north of Delhi. The Marathas were at a disadvantage. They had no supplies, no local allies to support them, and most importantly, they had forgotten the weapon that had made them so strong: mobile cavalry. Instead, they set up camp in the European style using heavy infantry artillery, but they were completely unfamiliar with this way of fighting. On 14th of January 1761, the battle broke out around dawn. It began with a heavy artillery barrage from the Dani combined with Rohilla cavalry against the Maratha right wing. This wing, commanded by Vishwasra, son of Peshwa Baji Rao, was broken in less than an hour. The militia units disintegrated and their ranks were in disarray. Sadash Rao with his bodyguards and Huzurat soldiers attempted a counter-attack in the center, almost breaking the Dani line. But then, a flanking attack from the left flank of the Dani Rohilla army completely cut off the Maratha supply lines, leaving them surrounded. In the battle that lasted almost the entire day, almost the entire Maratha upper echelon was wiped out. Sadashra died in the encirclement. Vishwasra was shot dead by artillery. The Maratha army suffered terrible losses. Historical estimates put the number at 70,000 to 80,000 dead or captured, many of them civilians who had followed the army, one of the greatest massacres of the 18th century. The army that had shaken Delhi collapsed in the middle of the northern plains. It was a total disaster, not only militarily, but also psychologically. It is worth noting, however, that the Mughals did not recover from Panipat because they were no longer a party to the war. Ahmed Shah Durrani could not stay to rule India after his victory. He retreated to Afghanistan. Shah Alam remained on the throne in Delhi, living in name only without military power. Panipat did not save the Mughals. It only delayed Maratha rule by a few years. And it was there that the Marathas realized that an empire could not survive solely on military victory. It had to be based on consensus, organization, and a clear vision of territory, and not just on inertia. Panipat seemed to be the graveyard of the Maratha dream of unity. But just a few years after that disaster, the world witnessed something almost unbelievable. The Marathas not only did not disappear, but also recovered with astonishing speed and vitality. While empires often took decades to rebuild after a total defeat, the Marathas, with their decentralized but flexible power, rose up in less than a decade. The leader of the reconstruction was Peshwa Madhavrao I, son of Balahisar Baji Rao. Unlike his father, who was burdened by the haunting memories of Panipat, Madhavra was a leader with a sharp organizational mind and strict discipline. He started from the basics, restoring the administrative system, strengthening relations with the local sardars, stabilizing the deen, and then gradually expanding outward. From the mid-1760s to the early 1770s, Maratha generals such as Mahaji Scindia, and Turkoji Hulkar defeated the rebellious princes, recaptured important regions such as Gujarat, Bundelkhand, Malwa, and especially advanced north where Delhi, the symbolic capital of the Mughal Empire, was in chaos after the departure of Ahmad Shadani in 1771. Mahaji Scindia launched a major campaign to recapture Delhi. The Maratha army marched from the central region, crossed the Chambal River, defeated the Rohilla armies and other warlords who held the capital. The battle was short-lived, but had great political significance. After winning the victory, Mahaji entered the Red Fort, handing over the throne to Shah Alam, the Mughal emperor, who had been wandering since being overthrown by Dani. However, this restitution was only symbolic. From now on, Shah Alam lived in his own capital. But all decisions, all edicts, all official appointments had to go through the Maratha representative. It was a court under complete protection, no different from a puppet set up to legitimize the power of the one who actually wielded the sword. With their dominant position restored, the Marathas entered a period of consolidating power across the Deen and central India. Each Sardar family, Holkar, Scindia, Gakwad, Bhonsle, governed a separate region responsible for raising troops and paying tribute to the Peshwa. This system, though loose, was very flexible, allowing the Marathas to effectively control large areas without a heavy central apparatus. However, there were still some entrenched forces that refused to yield, typically the Nizam of Hyderabad, the remaining traditional ally of the Mughal court. The final confrontation between the Marathas and the Nizam took place in 1795 at the Battle of Kata. The Battle of Kata is considered to be the last large-scale campaign launched by the Maratha Confederacy with the full participation of the major families. Under the joint command of the Peshwa, Hulkar, Scindia and Gaekwad, the Marathas mobilized a force of about 70,000 troops, besieged and attacked the Kata fortress, the Nizam's key defensive center in the eastern Deen. The battle raged for several days. Although the Nizam's army was supported by some French officers and possessed strong artillery, they were still unable to withstand the overwhelming coordination of the Marathas. Finally, the Nizam was forced to sue for peace, accept a huge ransom, and formally recognize Maratha suzerainty over the entire Deen. With their victory at Kata, the Marathas had completely removed all remaining obstacles to the old Mughal order. Their dominance was no longer disputed. Shah Alam still wore the imperial crown, but no real power. The Nawabs, the local governors, even those who had been loyal to Delhi, now had to negotiate and pay tribute to the Marathas if they wanted to survive. By the early 19th century, the map of power in India had changed completely. The Marathas, not claiming imperial title, not absolute unity, were the real power in almost every important region. However, while they were busy expanding and dealing with local powers, a new, more stealthy and disciplined rival entered the picture, the British East India Company. Thus ends a journey that has spanned more than 2 centuries. From the first Maratha horseman riding across the Sahyadri hills to the last Mughal flag falling in Delhi. The Marathas never declared themselves emperors, never claimed complete dominion, but they ended the Mughal Empire's de facto power in a way that no foreign power has ever done. And then, like the people they overthrew, they too were caught in the same cycle of history, divided internally, lacking a national vision, and eventually swallowed up by an enemy who fought not with weapons, but with systems. If you find this story of the rise and fall of 2 indigenous empires worth pondering, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. There are many more battles, dynasties, and historical turning points waiting to be told. Not as a lecture, but as slices of time where men, ambitions, and fates collided to create what we call history. See you in the next battles.